Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular meeting of the board, public session, January 17th, 2024. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the customary and traditional lands of the Indigenous peoples of this territory. Would you now please stand for the singing of the national anthem? Mr. Director, will you take roll call, please?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, this is your roll call for January 17th, 2024, public session. Chair Schooler.
Present.
Vice Chair Johnston.
Present.
Trustee Danaher.
Present.
Trustee Dufour.
Present.
Trustee Francis. Trustee Francis. Trustee Jordan.
Present.
Trustee Labonte.
Present.
Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Trustee McDonald.
Present.
Trustee Parisien.
Present.
Trustee Swan.
Present.
Student Trustee Ali.
Present.
Student Trustee Verk.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you. Item 601. Approval of consent agenda items 6.2 to 6.3. Moved by Trustee Dufour and seconded by, thank you, Trustee Labonte, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve consent agenda items 6.2 to 6.3, January 17th, 2024, as amended. Would you please cast your vote online?
Trustee Parisien in favor.
In favor. That motion passes. Item 7.1, conflict of interest declarations. Do we have any? Seeing none, we move on. Item 8.01, Director Ferguson, do you have any remarks?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I think trustees are well aware that this is exam season as we're getting ready for that. And so I know that our secondary students are busy preparing. These can be a stressful time of year. And I know that there's a lot of work going on in our schools to support those students. I want to give a special shout out, though, to the student senators and our two student trustees. Despite all of this, we still held our meeting today, and it was, as usual, a remarkably well attended and run by our two student trustees. So just a shout out to those folks that even during all this, making the time for that important session. So thank you. Back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And thank you for stealing my remarks. So we'll move on to item 10.01, showcasing our schools. And today we have Athens District High School.
Welcome to Athens District High School, home of the Warriors. Located in Athens, a rural village north of Brockville, ADHS has the distinction of being the smallest secondary school in Upper Canada District School Board. Being small is part of our identity, and we embrace the tight-knit relationships that we have built between students, staff, families, and community partners. The original ADHS building was erected in 1924 with an expansion completed in 1966.
We offer comprehensive programming including extended and immersion French, a full array of academic courses designed to meet the needs of all learners, and extensive extracurricular and athletic programs. We also offer 2 exciting specialist, high-skill major programs, health and wellness and agriculture. We are very proud of our rural roots with ties to the agricultural community and local farm operations going back over a century. A highlight of the school year is our annual Fall Country Fair Day, in which students and staff participate in country-themed activities. The community loves to see the student tractor parade wind its way through town.
Real-world learning is an essential part of the programming at ADHS. Our technology program is thriving, and students work with cutting-edge equipment and software. We work hard on intensive timber frame construction and bench building projects for the community, and the students experiment with state-of-the-art manufacturing equipment, such as our new CNC machine. We have established community partnerships that greatly impact authentic learning experiences, including our work with the Thousand Islands Watershed Land Trust and their nearby Glen Alba property. Students take part in planting of endangered tree species, soil analysis, cedar rail fence building, timber frame woodshed construction, and species at-risk art projects. The World War I focused Hill 70 project gives grade 10 students an immersive and cross-curricular real-world learning project that truly brings history to life for our students.
At the ready, soldiers, man your stations! Over the top!
It's really wonderful to immerse ourselves in this wonderful display of trench warfare, and it really gives us the source of empathy that we need in history class, because usually people are always looking in their textbooks and saying how boring history is, and our teacher really just gives us the urge to just go with history, and be in the moment of what they were doing, what they were seeing, and how it affected them.
ADHS provides great leadership opportunities to our students. Link Crew and International Crew are peer mentoring programs that see our seniors have a positive impact on students moving into high school, as well as international students transitioning to life in Canada.
I'm Jada.
And I'm Sophie.
And we are Link Crew leaders.
These programs foster positive relationships and teach innovative soft skills that are important to learning in the 21st century. ADHS is very proud of its parliamentary tradition with one of the longest running school-based parliaments in Canada. The parliament system began at ADHS in 1947 and allows the students to have a voice in almost every facet of school life. Led by an elected group of students, which include a prime minister and a leader of the opposition, our warriors take student government to a whole new level.
One thing that I like about our school is a lot of things are completely student-run, like our parliament.
I think another highlight of ADHS is the parliament system, because just the way it runs, there's really an opportunity to really experience what parliament is like in the real world and how it would have gone. It really allows students to volunteer and make an actual impact in the school.
ADHS thrives through the power of small. Personal relationships within our school and its partners, a vast array of real-world learning opportunities, and a vibrant extracurricular program continues to have a massive impact on our students, staff, and country community.
ADHS, I think, is a particularly special school because of the small size and the opportunities we get offered because of it. Larger schools, you can get caught up in, just being lost in the crowd. While at ADHS, I think every student and the work they do, the projects they enjoy, they stand out more than you would see anywhere else.
And I think that's an amazing thing that a small school has. It can have more support for its students to do what moves them.
Trustee McAllister, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would be pleased to. Good evening, everyone. We all have high schools in our wards, of which we can be proud for many reasons. And my comments are a hybrid, frankly, between Principal Brent Brown and myself. But Principal Brown has mentioned the following, and I quote, "While many would view our small size as a significant challenge, our school and community have embraced the power of small. We 100% believe that the personalized attention and the tight-knit relationships that are built between the students, staff, and community are a significant strength. We offer comprehensive programming, including French immersion, robust academic programs, 2 SHISM programs, and a variety of extracurricular programs. As strengths, we value and take advantage of our rural roots. We are an agricultural community, and our students and staff really appreciate the school's efforts to embrace this aspect of our community. This is seen through our Country Day, Fair Day, Tractor Parade, other agriculturally themed activities. Real-world learning, thriving technology programs, community partnerships such as Glen Elb, Thousand Islands Watershed Land Trust. Real-world learning is a lens for all of our programming. The Hill 70 project brings history alive for our students through extensive use of primary source materials, forensic archaeology, writing, drama, and artistic works. Student Parliament, one of the oldest active student parliaments in Canada. Student government is led by an elected Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition. I want to say that if I could interject here at this point that I have been involved with both the Glen Elb Learning Centre on Highway 42, which is a tremendous resource for all our schools. And it provided a tremendous learning opportunity for our students. And the second one was with regard to the Heritage Post and Beam project last year, in which students constructed 2 structures using age-old tools and techniques. And most recently, as you saw in the video, A Journey Through Time was an interactive display of the research and work of teacher Shannon Campbell's art history class in a very interdisciplinary project featuring a fascinating exploration of World War I and II, art, history, digital, and a real-life bunker, period, music, and food. So Principal Brown continues, while small is our strength, it can also be a big challenge. We have to be very creative when developing our programs for our students to ensure that we can put together a program that meets the needs for all of our students. It does sometimes mean we need to offer courses on a rotating basis or online, and of course, there are fiscal challenges to be small as well. However, the advantages far outweigh the challenges. So, frankly, that sums it up. I'm a very proud trustee of this particular school, and I wish them well and hope that you will have an opportunity to come and visit the Glen Elb project, for example, and the school itself. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Trustee McAllister. Item 10.2, showcasing another one of our schools. This time it's Rockland Public School.
Welcome to Rockland Public School, where we are committed to growing and caring together. We are in the city of Clarence, Rockland, east of Ottawa in Prescott-Russell County, on the bank of the beautiful Ottawa River. We honor that we are on the unceded, traditional, and ancestral land of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee nations. RKPS is a bilingual, diverse, inclusive, and thriving school community with a welcoming feel that makes it the best place to teach and learn. With all kindergarten students beginning their education with half of their day in French.
My name is Noah, My favorite thing in kindergarten is playing. My name is Macy, and my favorite part of kindergarten is drawing.
At RKPS, our dedicated, professional, and caring staff strive to help our children be the best they can be academically, socially, and emotionally. We are especially proud of how we support our students with special education needs.
Here at RKPS, our amazing principal and teachers have provided us with many leadership opportunities. These opportunities we get teaches us responsibility and encourages us to explore new things and move out of our comfort zone.
Hi, I'm Abby, and this is my teaching partner Sarah, and we're part of the literacy team here at Rockland Public School. Our first goal as a team has been implementing UFly across the primary division and as intervention in the junior grades. Our staff have been really incredible at collaborating together to make sure that everybody is comfortable and competent in working towards that goal.
French teachers have been working with their English partners to help implement things like pratique phonemique and using phonemic maps so that we can achieve our literacy goals across the year.
We are equally determined to close the achievement gaps in math for our students, so they are demonstrating number sense and operations at grade level. We value our student voice and have worked with a team to create our school equity and wellness goal.
Hi, my name is Tansio and I'm part of the Student Voice Committee. The committee has decided to revitalize and promote the anti-bullying initiative called WITS. W stands for walk away, I stands for ignore, T stands for talk it out, and S stands for seek out. By having older students act as mentor for the younger students to teach them how to deal with conflict. Thank you.
As a staff, we believe that when students feel like they belong, can regulate their emotions, and have at least one trusted adult at school, they will be able to overcome the stressors of everyday life, be willing to take risks in their learning, and thrive.
So far this year, students have participated in cross-country, soccer, and basketball. Later in the school year, we will hopefully have track and field, ball hockey, and volleyball. We also have intramurals. For intramurals, we have speed stacking, dodgeball, and ball hockey.
Students love these clubs because there's something for everyone and they're so much fun. Here at RKPS, we think that clubs can help everyone feel included and grow creativity.
We are proud and grateful for our active school counseling community as they play a significant role in the development of our students and families. They present several opportunities throughout the school year to engage parents and guardians and children in fun activities to connect them to the school and foster positive and trusting relationships.
Movie nights, dances, and one of our biggest events is our Summer Fest, which we have at the end of the year, and we have jugglers and face painters and balloon artists, something for everybody to enjoy.
But right now it's our annual treasure sale, and that's the most highly anticipated event of the year, and the kids absolutely love it.
I will respect myself and others.
I will respect myself and others.
I will treat others the way I want to be treated.
I will treat others the way I want to be treated.
I will use my wits.
I will use my wits.
Je vais faire de mon mieux.
Je vais faire de mon mieux.
At Rockland Public School, success and safety are everyone's responsibility.
At Rockland Public School, success and safety are everyone's responsibility.
Trustee, would you like to say a few words about Rockland Public School?
Thank you so much, Chair. I just wanted to, not too many words, but the video says it all. It is an elementary school, not a high school, even though those students were so well spoken. Principal Walker and Vice Principal Roberry have done an amazing job. They have done a great job this year bringing the school and the students back together. It is a school that is bursting at the seams with students because Rockland is a growing and upcoming community hub for all of our parents. It is a very bilingual community, so it's wonderful to see that all of our students are learning both French and English at the school. And the school council there is absolutely amazing. You get invited. I get invited to all these events. Only some I can attend, but there is truly always something going on at Rockland Public School. So thank you very much for allowing us to showcase this video tonight. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Parisian. Item 11.1, as part of the Director's Work Plan, student wellness plays a very important role. And we are going to get a status update on the Bell Times consultation. Here with us tonight is the principal from Carleton Place High School, Mr. Casey Nelson. I will turn it over to him. Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for having me back to speak about this consultation process for Bell Times. I'd like to first start by thanking April Scott Clark and the communications team and Dr. Kathleen Moss for their work. They've been incredibly helpful through this process, so I'd like to give them a brief shout out if I could. So it's always important to ground us in why we're here. So I'm sharing the contents of the original motion that was passed in April of 2023. And this was really the motion that set this all in play. So when I reported back to the board in 2023, I shared that our consultation process has been completed with Parent Involvement Committee, Special Education Advisory Committee, and our labor partners. It was at that meeting that I was asked to expand the consultation to reach a larger audience of stakeholders. And you can see that we have consulted with parents, guardians, student senate, school councils across the UCDSB. The request to continue meeting with stakeholders and to collect feedback has been fulfilled. As I mentioned, since the last time I was here and presented to board, we have provided opportunities to consult with parents and guardians by way of two in-person sessions, which were live streamed to the UCDSB YouTube channel for those that cannot attend in person. After those two sessions, a condensed version of the videos was created, and that condensed version, as well as links to the full sessions, were shared with principals specifically for their parent councils, school council, the rest of their staff, and parents and guardians within their school. So the in-person sessions, I think we're all familiar with that. So I'll just take a quick little review of what we uncovered there. So on November 27th and November 29th, we visited Smith Falls District Collegiate and Tugwa Secondary School. We were able to assemble a panel of sleep experts to share information about the importance of sleep for adolescents. The presentation was an opportunity for all parents and guardians to learn about the science and to understand why the Upper Canada School Board is exploring adjustments to bell times for elementary and secondary students. During the two sessions, parents and guardians heard from Dr. Paul Remiliotis, who's a pediatrician and currently Chief Medical Officer for the Eastern Ontario Health Unit. Dr. Geneviève Forêt has a PhD in clinical psychology and currently works at the University of Quebec. Her main research focuses on the role of sleep in children, adolescents, and young adults. Dr. David Armstrong, who is familiar to this group, is a clinical psychologist and former chief psychologist for the Upper Canada School Board. Dr. Armstrong's work is grounded in supporting children in mental health, youth and mental health. We also had David Sompi. He has presented to the board before as well. He's an active member in his community and has sat on numerous boards in healthcare related fields. He's currently the chair of the steering committee for the Lanark County Planet Youth. After the panel delivered content, parents were provided with opportunities to ask questions. The panel was able to field questions that were related to their area of expertise and questions that were posed that were related to concerns or questions about individual opinions and family circumstances. Parents were directed to the feedback form that was created for that purpose. The form was intended to capture parent guardians' impressions of the science, but was also crafted such that parents would have the ability to share their feedback related to family circumstances and the impact that change could have. We welcomed roughly 40 parents to Smith Falls District Collegiate and roughly 30 in Tugwa. Online attendance for both events was recorded at 120 people. Regarding parent-guardian feedback, we had 1,858. I apologize, that is off by 2 up there. If we compare that to the larger group of stakeholders that we have, which is somewhere between 50 and 55,000 stakeholders, that would represent a 3% response rate. And to date, we've had approximately 2,500 views of the video. I was just informed that people are still viewing, which I guess is wonderful news. Okay, you can see here, so this is some feedback from those forms. You can see here that of the 1858 responses that we had, 34% reported to have one child in our system, 45% reported to have two, while 21% reported to have three children. Thank you. The majority of the feedback came from elementary parents, which represented 59%, intermediate landed at 15.5%, and secondary was at 25.5%. It's important to note that the feedback form that we had included 15 questions with both closed and open-ended questions. And from that, there's a couple themes that have come clear. For the first one is important to note is that the science is clear. Overwhelming amount of evidence to support adjustments of bell times was evident, and there's consensus that adolescents are not getting enough sleep in the current model. The second one, and you can see that to the right there, you can see we've broken down the top concerns: family work arrangements, extracurricular activities, before and after school care, student employment, transportation, daycare, and then there's a small bit that's other. It's important to note there, if we look at family work arrangements, before and after school care, transportation, and daycare, those all will run through daycare in some form. And I will say, anecdotally and fielding emails, and I know the trustees received some emails, and they were it was great to share them with me, and speaking to parents that those are the main concerns that they have. So with that response rate, there are a few discrepancies. Initially, we noticed that the survey completion rate was higher than the number of people that joined us online. And it was our hope that all those that responded to the form would have viewed the presentation before they actually completed the feedback form. So we're not confident that that was the case. And unfortunately, we did see some people online encouraging other parents and guardians to complete the form more than once. It's fine, as it was not our intent to create a referendum or to put this out to vote. Our goal was really to share the science and then collect the various gaps that exist. And for that reason, the feedback form is still open. Some that completed the feedback form indicated that they do not support a bell time change, even if the board could address the concerns that were raised. And this might suggest that people might have had their minds made up previously or deemed the inconvenience that it might cause greater than the benefits. It was also interesting that some indicated that their thinking around the importance of bell times did not change after attending the session, but some good news can be seen here. You can see that from this slide that 76% of responses indicated they felt very informed or somewhat informed about the reasons for a potential bell change after the sessions. And I think that really speaks to the high quality of the speakers that we had during those in-person sessions and traveling around. So based on some of the in-person feedback that we received after the first presentation, we felt it was appropriate to make some adjustments to our opening remarks to address some of the concerns that clearly needed to be. And anyone that was in attendance for the first one and the second would have seen a little bit of a different introduction. So we touched on the expansion on the background of wellness and sleep and a brief timeline about how we got here. So we underscored that we are currently fulfilling the trustees' request to simply arm all stakeholders with the same information that was presented to the trustee group. We also confirmed that if implemented, the adjustment would be revenue neutral. There was affirmation that this was not a done deal and that consultation was meant to be transparent and productive. And we also clarified that buses could not accommodate all students traveling at the same time, because that came up a couple of times. Okay, Student Senate. So it was December the 6th that we visited Student Senate. I got the thumbs up, that's good. So senators came well prepared. That's likely not shocking to anybody. So many senators reached out to capture student voice prior to watching or hearing the science or rationale behind potential adjustments to bell times. Senators came to Senate with this information about some student opinions. At Senate, we had Dr. Armstrong presented and fielded questions. We also had a student from Waterloo Region District. He spoke to Senate about his advocacy work to support wellness through bell changes. And from that meeting, there's a couple themes that came clear here. Students accepted the science behind the sleep and the need to support adolescents. Students conceded that they put other priorities over their own physical and mental and academic outcomes. Students have concerns about how this switch could impact extracurricular work schedules and time with family. 9 of the senators, which is 39%, were in favor of bell time change, and those that were currently not in favor shared that they'd be more open to the change if direct solutions were made from the concerns that were, if the concerns that were raised had direct solutions if it was to be implemented. Some senators pressed us on the details about bell times. Good for them. As this had not been set yet, some students were interested in bell times that did not shift from 8 o'clock a.m. to 9:30 a.m. And so, for example, could bell times reflect 8:30 a.m. And 8:40 a.m. for secondary students? I have included a couple of quotes there. Bear with me, I will read them. The first one is general feedback. So I think that our late start time has a lot of potential. Only with roadblocks we can very easily get over. I think it is an overall good change with a thumbs up. Next one says, employment is our biggest concern, especially in families where the income of the high schooler is very important, and also value in their time as well. They need to be home too. Also, a time must be set to make much more accurate decision. And the last one here is, rather than a sudden change, perhaps a series of small bell time changes over a few years, which would give the board and the community more time to adapt, to put in place the necessary infrastructure to support those changes. So I did share that last one again, as I did have some conversations with some senators at lunchtime, and they expressed their desire to explore different bell times outside of that hard flip. Again, there was assumptions made that any adjustments that would made would be that hard flip. Okay, school council. So as I previously mentioned, all school councils in the Upper Canada District School Board have been presented with the science, the video, and the background information. All principals have been armed with that information. And my colleagues have provided me with feedback. And anecdotally, I would say that elementary councils certainly have more questions about the potential change than the secondary do. So I can only speak to Carleton Place High School School Council, but at my own school council meeting, we had a fulsome, lengthy conversation. Parent guardians again raised questions about the concerns around topics such as daycare, extracurriculars, and student part-time jobs. They did not refute the science and appreciate that this is a wellness initiative. Our council's main concern was the consultation process itself. Some felt that we should have more answers to the questions during in-person sessions, and maybe the Upper Canada District School Board has already made up their mind. I took the opportunity to remind them that our mandate with this consultation was to share the science and to empower stakeholders. Appreciating that many parents would have questions and concerns with personal circumstances, we created a feedback form for parents. Through this lens, our parents felt better about the process and where we are in that consultation. In the end, our council conceded that if steps are taken to fill some gaps, keep communication high, the adjustments could positively impact students. Our student representative also agreed that their initial reaction was to disagree with the potential change, but after more time and information, they also agreed that the change would likely benefit students. I appreciate that that's only the school council's, that was my experience at school council at Carleton Place, but I think that it's worth sharing as a, gives you a good lens into what folks are talking about. Then with that, Chair Schooler, I'll turn things back over to you for discussion and any questions that you might have.
Well, thank you very much for that excellent report and for your leadership on this file. We greatly appreciate what you've done. Are there questions that folks would like to ask? Trustee Labonte.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Principal Nelson, or the director for that matter, do we have any specific timelines on how we're going to proceed?
Mr. Director.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that question, Trustee Labonte. Trustees passed a motion unanimously saying that they were in favor of exploring this and consulting with stakeholders. Although we've consulted I would say the largest group of stakeholders perhaps in the history of this board and the most comprehensive consultation process we've ever undertaken. There's still other steps, and so I appreciate that question. Another group that we're still continuing to work with is STAO, and also with our coterminous board. And so those conversations are ongoing. Principal Nelson's correct. The bulk of the consultation with the large group of stakeholders has now been completed. And as you heard tonight, we got very valuable information from that. But there's still more work to be done with our coterminous board and with STAO about possible scenarios. And then we would bring that back to the board in the future for future consultation.
Thank you, Director.
Yes, student trustee Verk.
There. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. We just wanted to say that we do appreciate the fact that we had the opportunity to have students involved in this process as well, and have their direct feedback captured through our the presentation here as well. Very quick concern that I did have was based on the feedback that was received from students, what is being done, in terms of the process for consideration with this bell times change? Are there any actions that are being taken at the moment, or what are we doing with the feedback that has been presented by students?
Director Ferguson.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So at this point, we've collected that information. They've given some of their concerns and challenges that they see. They're not dissimilar, as you heard tonight, from what parents have said. It's now up to the Board of Trustees to consider some of those and to look at potential solutions. You'll see in the agenda there is a motion that's being brought forward after this one that attempts to look at some of those issues. So at this point, it's up for the Board of Trustees to discuss some of this feedback and potentially give staff direction on where they'd like to go next.
Trustee Swan.
Through you, Chair. My one question is still about the surveys with parent councils. Can we not have that broken down into? We heard about Carleton Place, but I'd like to know what the other high school councils put forward, and especially what the elementary councils put forward as suggestions. Thank you.
Mr. Director.
Through Mr. Chair. So what Principal Nelson's presented here tonight does reflect what we heard from those. That was included. It wasn't just Principal Nelson, because he also wears the hat of a school principal, was able to share his personal experience of how that went at council. All of the information from those school councils, we then provided those parents the forms. We also sent this to all parents so they could see this. They were then able to fill those forms out, and we've taken all of that and put that into what we see as the overarching themes here. So that was what was presented earlier. Perhaps that we could have been a little more clear on that when we were presenting. Here's what folks told us. That included the data that we gathered at school councils. As Principal Nelson said, and I think it's important to reiterate this. This was not a referendum, and so it's not going to be able to say this is what certain people wanted or didn't want. And unfortunately, we do have evidence of people who are opposed to the change admitting online that they filled the survey out several times and encouraging others who are opposed to do the same thing. So if we were doing a true referendum, that would be very problematic, but we intentionally designed this survey so that we wouldn't be checking people's credentials before they could fill it out. We just wanted to hear what everybody had to say, cast our net as wide as possible so we could bring that feedback back to the Board of Trustees with some overarching themes that people may want to consider. And as you saw too, the response rate, even if all of those people were parents of Upper Canada School Board students, which we know for certain they aren't all that, it still would only be a 3% response rate. So there's some challenges with trying to go to very specific, what did they say at this school or this school. Instead, we're looking at overarching themes to grab what people are saying. And as you heard Principal Nelson say, very consistent across all of these groups of what the top things were that they're concerned about. Hopefully that answers your question, Trustee Swan.
Trustee McAllister. Trustee McAllister, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This process of consultation has been completed, and I applaud Principal Nelson for his work because he was also combining this with his duties as principal of CPHS. I have some I think the process has achieved its goal in that it has identified gaps, pardon me, gaps in the process that have been identified by parents, particularly, and the community. And I think it will be interesting to see how, from an operational point of view, how the director and his senior team will address those gaps. But I look forward to furthering this, and I will be speaking further during the motion. But I appreciate the work that has been done, so thank you.
Trustee McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the biggest thing for me is that we've gone through a process here that we did not do whenever we moved the bell times to the current situation. When this was done, where secondary students had an early start, the situation was not in a similar format. The format was we had information sessions to say, here's what we're doing. We didn't go out to communities to say, here's the science behind it. There was no science. The science behind the bell time changes a few years ago were it was going to be convenient for us to be able to offer a common timetable, period. There was nothing around mental health. There's nothing around the student well-being piece. I think what we've done here is we've made the connection to the science and the student well-being piece and the opportunity for us to make something right. When we look at the situation, we've got a small percentage of parents that participated, even if it was multiple submissions into the form. What does that tell me? It tells me that for the most part, I think people are okay with the direction that we're heading. Because if people were really adamantly opposed, the participation rate would have been different. What does the motion say? The motion doesn't say that we're going to go from 8 o'clock to 9:30. Okay, you got to come back to that motion. The motion says that we support an early start for elementary and a later start for secondary. That's where we're heading towards. That's what we want to try and achieve. We still have some work to work on in discussions and collaboration with our coterminous board, and we need to make sure that those things take place. I can tell you from a STEO perspective, sitting on STEO, is that STEO is ready. As soon as we say the green light to please look into further study of what this would look like, they're ready to do the hard work of turning the schedule in a situation that secondary students would start later. We haven't provided them bell times to say this is specifically when we want them to start. They will do that study and come back to us. It will take some time before, if we go down that road, to make sure that if we decide to actually make that adjustment, for them to do the work and to make sure that we have it aligned for a start of a school year. And so, this is an ongoing process. It's an opportunity for us to have that discussion with our coterminous board now in a more rigorous way. Because it's really important for us to make sure that all students that share the transportation are going to get the benefit of having a potential change with secondary students starting late and elementary students starting first. So I'm pleased with where we've gone. I do have to say I attended the Tugwa session, and from the presenters that were there, and it's not to diminish Dr. Armstrong, it was great whenever he first presented this information to us a number of years ago. But Dr. Armstrong and the other experts that were on provided much more in-depth information, and I think really even helped me understand a little bit more the importance of this and the urgency associated to it, to make sure that we do things right for kids, those adolescent years especially, and set them up for success down the road. So I'm grateful for where we are. I think the next step for us is to make sure that we start to have that dialogue with our coterminous Catholic District School Board of Eastern Ontario.
Trustee McAllister, your hand is up. Do you have another comment or question?
No, I will speak to the motion when it comes up. Sorry, I will lower my hand.
Hi, through you, Chair, again. When Principal Nelson mentioned revenue neutral. Does this mean that the Catholic Board has to be on to make this happen as revenue neutral, or could we perhaps go ahead without it if this motion is passed?
Executive Superintendent Hobbs, can you speak to that?
As Trustee McDonald pointed out, there hasn't been a comprehensive study done by Steele, but I think the sort of consensus around the table among the people who run the buses are that you couldn't do it without the Catholic Board.
Okay, thank you on that.
Seeing no more questions, we're first of all going to thank Principal Nelson for his work once again. And we're going to move on because we did mention the fact that there are gaps. And 11.2 relates to a motion that addresses one of those gaps. We have a motion that's being brought forward by Trustee Dufour about expanding after-school programming in Upper Canada District schools, elementary schools in particular. So I will read the motion, and then we will discuss the motion and then have a vote. Trustee Dufour, okay, moved by Trustee Dufour and seconded by Vice Chair Johnson, that the Upper Canada District School Board look at the possibility of expanding after-school programming in our elementary schools at the lowest cost to families. And Trustee Dufour, you would like to speak to this first.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. An important part of the role of the trustees to bring forth the voices of their constituent. As we consider a change in bell times, I have heard from many families a concern about access to after-school programming for their young children. We all know we live in complicated economic times, and many families are feeling the pressure of increased housing and food costs, as well as a rise in the overall cost of living. There are families who worry that a change in bell time could put pressure on already limited after-school programming opportunities, as well as financial pressure on their already tight budgets. Because of this, I'm putting forth the motion that you just heard about from Trustee Schooler.
Vice Chair Johnson, would you care to add to anything that Trustee Dufour has
well, my findings are the same, Chair, as Trustee Dufour. That's a common, when parents have an issue, that's frequently mentioned, the daycare piece. So I think for the board to take a look at the possibility, particularly if we have schools who aren't offering daycare currently, because we're just at the examining. I think it's always good to look at possibilities.
Thank you. Questions or comments? First of all, we have Trustee Pazian.
Great, thank you very much. Through you, Chair. I guess I just have a question, and it might be towards the director. When we say we're looking at expanding our after-school programming, is it with a third-party provider? Because I know most of our, the daycares were in Prescott Russell are by external providers, or are we looking at expanding within the school its own capacity?
Mr. Director?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. This motion, I believe, in conversations with Trustee Dufour, is specifically to the Upper Canada School Board, offering this in locations in particular that may not have it and that we need to expand it. So it would not be third parties. This is looking at Upper Canada School Board, exploring options for an extended day.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Trustee Smith, you have a question?
Yes. Through you, Chair. I'd like to know, even if we don't go forward with the busing piece, if we could still, if we pass this motion, we will still pursue this piece, because I too agree. This is such an important piece in my community and other communities I've got emails from. And it's something that's needed, especially in this day and age.
Mr. Director?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, if this motion passes, although this comes right after that report and has mentioned that this is what had trustees to start to think about this, if this motion passes the way that it's written here, we would still be bringing back the report on the possibility of this regardless of what happens with the other item.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions or comments, I will read the motion one more time before we go to the vote.
Excuse me, Chair, I had my hand up.
Okay, I didn't see it. You have a question, Trustee McAllister.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I wish to support this motion with a few reservations. I think the consultation process has been completed and it has identified certain gaps, one of which is this very issue of before and after daycare. And the science is clear. This is the right thing to do for our students. And I hope that our other partners will agree. And one of the gaps is pertaining to this particular motion. And I think that we should still, where possible, continue with our third-party providers. But in the event that third-party providers are not available, then I strongly suggest that we fulfill the mandate of this particular motion and do what we can to support parents and our community. So I strongly support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I will read the motion. Moved by Trustee Dufour, seconded by Vice Chair Johnston, that the Upper Canada District School Board look at the possibility of expanding after-school programming in our elementary schools at the lowest cost possible to families. Please cast your votes online.
Chair, I don't see the motion online, but I'm in favor.
Trustee Jordan, just waiting for your vote. Trustee Jordan, just waiting for your vote. That motion passes. Moving on to item 11. This is the forecast number 2, our financial forecast number 2. And I would call upon Executive Superintendent of Business Services, Mr. Hobbs, to present that information to us. Mr. Hobbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, my pleasure to be back for financial forecast number 2. As trustees will note, I come back a number of times throughout the year to give updates on where we stand financially as circumstances evolve throughout the year, and this represents the second of 3. The summary tonight really is that we're projecting revenues now of $424 million and expenses of $423.8 million for compliance purposes. So if you do the quick math there, it's a $200,000 forecasted surplus, which represents essentially no change from the original budget that was passed back in May of 23 and no change from financial forecast number 1 in October. That being said, even though the net change is 0, there have been some minor fluctuations in GSN and non-GSN grants, which we'll unpack for you a little bit later on. And it's also based on a number of assumptions about revenues and expenses for the remainder of the year. And as trustees know, we're only 4 months into a 12-month fiscal year, and lots of things can still change, especially during the winter months where we see costs like staff replacement costs, absenteeism. We still are working to finalize enrollments up until March 31st, which has, of course, an impact on funding, collective bargaining, and so on. So those things are still underway, and we, of course, watch closely overall for the board and within our individual departments about how those are playing out. The third and final forecast of the year is going to be provided in April. That is a more fine-grained forecast where we're actually out talking to individual budget owners and taking a more detailed look as we're approaching the end of the school year, if not the end of the fiscal year. So moving on to the next slide, this is a slide you know well. And I always talk about, we're working on 3 years at any given time from a fiscal financial standpoint. As you saw in November, December timeframe, we presented the audited financial statements for last year. And so this is really an update on the current fiscal year 23-24 and where we see ourselves landing towards the end of the year. And of course, before too long, it'll be everyone's favorite time of year, budget time. And so that'll be starting, we'll be starting to ease you into that as to the outlook for what we see in the next couple months. And we're already having conversations as a finance team about what that looks like. So a little bit more about the financial forecast detail. Again, you see this slide every time, but the intention here is to show you the evolution of our forecast throughout the course of a fiscal year, beginning with the original budget, which is, as you know, itself a forecast. And back in May, when you passed that budget, we were anticipating revenues of $418 million. That had crept up on largely on the strength of increased enrollment by October to $423 million. And what you're seeing now is very modest change between the October forecast and now. And it's also worth noting that even though we're presenting to you this financial forecast on January 17th, most of the work to assemble the forecast actually occurred in late November and December of last year. So there really wasn't an awful lot of time between the October forecast and the one we're presenting tonight. But again, what we're seeing, I think, is if you were around during COVID times, what you would note is that from forecast to forecast, you are seeing rather large fluctuations in revenue and expense as the governments, federal and provincial in that case, were trying to feed us additional funding to deal with our COVID response. We had a couple years with rather large enrollment fluctuations early in the year as kids came back into our schools, but that's something that we're not seeing as much anymore. So things are tending to be much more predictable year over year and from original budget through our forecasting. So, and that's borne out in the numbers you see here. So as I immediately said, there's been no change to the net financial results. Now I'm going to jump into a slide explaining the change, because even though the actual bottom line forecasted results haven't changed that much, there is some movement within the original lines which are worth pointing out. So the first thing you'll see here on line 1 of this table, which refers to GSN and tuition fees, revenue is a little bit down compared to what we expected, and expenses are down correspondingly. And most of that is really due to the fact that at the beginning of the year, we estimate how much revenue we're going to get to support teaching staff. And that's based on an assumption of where everybody is going to be in the experience grid and what everyone's qualifications are going to be. And then once we get into the year, we see who we've actually got hired. And sometimes what happens is you've hired people who are lower on the experience grid, younger teachers that come in, and they generate less revenue, right? And so what you see here, that's primarily the result, or that's primarily the impact for this lower revenue than expected. It's just based on a difference between the actuals and our assumptions about teacher qualification and experience. And what you see, of course, is that funding is a little bit lower, but correspondingly expenses are lower. So it's not really a worry. And in fact, it's to our benefit by about $100,000. Transportation revenue, we see up by $400,000. And that's primarily as a result of higher gas prices than we've expected. And so what happens when, as you've heard me say previously, when gas prices are higher, we don't expect bus operators or bus companies to absorb that cost. The ministry funds us for those increased gas prices, and we flow that right through to bus companies as well. So we're expecting about $400,000 more in revenue, primarily due to benchmark increases in the anticipated price of fuel. And of course, the expense also increases correspondingly. And we, again, pass that right along. So no net change there, but just wanted to explain to you why you might see a difference. Line 3 refers to priorities and partnerships grants, which in the unfathomable case you've forgotten about what those are. They really represent additional grants that are special purpose grants in addition to the grants for student needs that the government provides, targeted at specific areas. We've got about $200,000 more revenue than we anticipated in PPF revenue and deferred revenue. And again, that will be matched by correspondingly higher expenses, so no net change there. School budgets. We're expecting a little bit higher spend of about $100,000. Again, no real surprise there, but it's higher allocations to schools as a result of higher enrollments in schools, so spending's up a little bit, but again, not a worry. And we're also reporting that, as those of you who are have experience working in schools know, it's been our practice that when schools run surpluses at the end of a fiscal year, so at the end of last fiscal year 22-23, we make those surpluses available to them in the coming year. And so what we've done is this represents also a flow through of the last of the surpluses that schools ran last fiscal year. So they now have all their money for this year and whatever they may have had left over last year to spend. And then finally, UCLC and C4K budgets. These are primarily revenue and expense changes associated with greater activity. So this is primarily, I'm told, reflecting greater than anticipated activity in the nutrition programs. So more funding and correspondingly more expense. And then at the other category, around $200,000, again, expense and revenue, primarily associated with some increases in community use as these things keep ramping up a little bit after the perhaps COVID lows, and a little bit of revenue recovery for staff secondments. So really not a lot there, but equally matched by expenses. So overall, what you see is, compared to financial forecast number 1, a zero net change at the bottom, but there is some minor movement within the individual lines as well. And trustees will know the favorite gas gauge slide. Again, our budget is perfectly compliant under the Ed Act. We're required to run a break-even or surplus budget, and only with the permission of the Ministry of Education can we run a deficit, but that is not really a worry for us at that time, even though we have really a razor-thin surplus. So $229,000 on $400 million is not a big percentage. But it is there as well, and we feel very comfortable that going into the end of the year, barring any major unforeseen circumstances, that we'll deliver results that are close to that. So a few management observations. One of the things that I may have mentioned in a previous financial forecast is that one of the things our team is working on in the finance department is, of course, doing everything we can to be more agile throughout the course of the school year and bringing in financial results at year end that are as close as possible to what we forecasted in the original budget. And so what we're looking at, we've made some moves to actually be more responsive in year already. And that's something that we've been sort of working on for the last couple of years. But there's a few other areas that we're looking on as we move towards the end of the year to say, okay, are there areas where we want to pay particularly close attention to based on our experience of the past couple of years to make sure that we don't have any large variances at the end of the year in terms of our year-end results, either to the good or to the bad. So one of the things that we're looking at is looking closely at sick leave utilization and associated staffing replacement costs. So as you know, with 4,000 plus staff, when people are sick, oftentimes they're replaced, and that incurs a cost to the organization. And it's a bit of a guess at the start of the year about how many staff are going to be absent, how frequently they're going to be absent, whether we can or can't replace them, how much that's going to cost. And for the last few years coming out of COVID, we've been very conservative in terms of budgeting staff replacement costs because all signals were coming out of COVID that staff absenteeism was going to be on the rise. And in fact, other boards have experienced real stress in those budgets because they've had quite a lot of staff absenteeism. That hasn't necessarily been borne out in Upper Canada to the extent that it has been in other boards. So we're going to be looking at that staff replacement cost line pretty closely and looking at whether or not we need to carry a line of that magnitude for the remainder of the year and in subsequent years. Of course, as you know, we also don't finalize our actual enrollments and therefore our enrollment-based revenue for the year until March 31st when we do the March 31st enrollment count. So we'll be, again, paying very close attention March 31st to what those enrollments are and what impact, if any, there will be to revenue. Again, also transportation expenses, looking at money that perhaps we don't spend on transportation due to driver shortages, inclement weather days, and so on. And of course, close to my heart in the facilities realm, winter snow removal and heating costs. So cost of fuel, cost of electricity, and how much we're spending to keep schools safe and warm for kids. The other things that we're looking at is waiting to see what, if any, will be in-year benchmark changes. There's been a Bill 124 settlement for staff that were affected by Bill 124, which is the 1%, the maximum 1% increase for certain employee classes that the government passed. There will be settlements to these, and oftentimes what happens is when the government chooses to flow the revenue to us has an impact. So we're going to be paying close attention to that and informing further forecasts. And again, as I said earlier, having emerged from the pandemic, there was really some quite extraordinary fluctuations in revenue and expense, even things like absenteeism, the ongoing phase in or phase out, or the existence of certain kinds of e-learning to support kids remotely and so on. All of these things, I think we're getting to hopefully gradually a return to a new steady state. And so that for us, we're constantly monitoring what that looks like and what the financial impact is going to be. So just really want to signal to trustees that we're doubling down on our effort to make sure that we're looking under every rock when we think about forecasting, so that we can make sure that we get money to the kids in schools that need it. So in summary then, financial forecast number one, again, anticipating a $200,000 or 0.2 million in-year surplus. No change from the surplus projected in financial forecast number one. Of course, it's based on a number of projections that can still change as the year progresses. And again, we're really trying to emphasize that we're looking at every avenue for making sure we're more precise with our forecasting, and also that we're providing intelligence that's needed for staff to be able to make adjustments in year as needed. And we will be presenting the third and final formal forecast of the financial results for the 23-24 in April with financial forecast number 3. That is it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hobbs. Do we have any questions or comments? Very good. Let us move on. We have 11-4, and Mr. Loshaw, Superintendent of Schools, is going to speak to a change to the 2023-24 school year calendar. Mr. Loshaw.
We'll hit the rewind button again, and we'll say good evening, everyone, and through you, Mr. Chair. Tonight I'm bringing forward an information item from the school operations portfolio, and the purpose of this report is to inform trustees of a change with the current school year calendar, specifically the PA day that is currently scheduled for April 26, 2024 will be moved to April 8th. And the reason or driver for this change is because a solar eclipse will occur on April 8th. And areas of the UCDSB will be in the path of the eclipse. So it's expected that the eclipse will occur between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. And as all of you as trustees would know, that is the time for our dismissal for students. So the PA day is being changed with the safety and well-being of students in mind. And the change will allow for students to be at home rather than en route home, walking home during that time that I just mentioned. So this also aligns with many many other school boards across the province are doing, and show you that we have a school year calendar that will be updated and shared with staff members, with family members, our school communities as well, parents and guardians, and that will happen tomorrow. So a brief information item, but important to bring trustees up to speed on change with the school year calendar, and to share this information with students, staff, and our parent communities as well.
Thank you, Superintendent Loshaw. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, we move on to the next item. Item 11.5. Our board belongs to a couple of organizations, and we have two motions that pertain to each of these organizations. And I'm going to read the motion for the first, and it's moved by, I'm going to assume, Trustee McDonald. Is that all right, Trustee McDonald?
Absolutely.
And seconded by Trustee Labonte, that the Upper Canada District School Board renew the 2024-2025 membership for the Ontario Public School Boards Association. Trustee McDonald, would you speak to the motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is information in your in your agenda about what OPSPA does around mission, beliefs, and constitution. But I think I'll just speak a little bit about the activities that we do on a regular basis. And so, there are obviously the formal pieces that that OPSPA takes care of. But on a daily basis, you get media reports. On a weekly basis, you see provincial legislation updates. That information is all gathered as a result of the work that that the OPSPA staff do. Advocacy is a huge part of it. In November, there was an advocacy day that was hosted at Queen's Park, where we had an opportunity to sit and meet with several MPPs across party lines to talk about the importance of some of the main priorities that OPSPA has across the province. And those main priorities are things that English public school boards benefit from. Ensuring that we've got funding that's coming through that covers all of the expenses and all the initiatives that are being laid out by the ministry. The other pieces that we do are, aside from advocacy, is also the professional development piece. And so, next week, a part of that is the Public Education Symposium. And there's a lot of work that goes into planning that and preparing to make sure that trustees receive the professional development that they need, as well as the online resources that are available for trustees to be able to use and tap into on a regular basis. The AGM is also a huge component of that as well, whenever there's professional development associated to it. Some of the pieces that you may not be aware of are, being a part of the consortium that handles and addresses and deals with many of the energy issues across the province. So whenever the gas companies or the electric companies go in for rate increases, the Energy Board receives that, and OPSPA has been a main component or main driver of ensuring that those rates stay low and that we benefit from some of those reductions associated to the energy costs for running our schools. And one other piece is the copyright piece. There's a huge significance, and you would think, well, listen, we're a school, and we can just photocopy material and give it out to kids. Well, there are some requirements that we need to make sure that we're aware of and adhering to. And there are some costs associated to being able to do some of those things on a regular basis. And so OPSPA leads the charge across Canada when it comes to copyright and the work that they were doing with the board that looks at setting those rates. So a lot of work that gets done behind the scenes that really we don't hear and talk about very often. But does have a pretty significant financial impact on the reduction of costs that we see on a regular basis. So that's just a little snapshot of what we do, other than what you might see in the bylaws and the mission and vision side of things. And I'm happy to answer any question. Actually, before I go further, one of the other pieces that we do as well is create those collaborative environments where we can work with other organizations, and so we have created those opportunities to have that work with municipalities, that work with coterminous boards. You see that when it comes to labor relations. OPSPA does take a lead on a lot of the negotiations that happen across the province, and we work with other boards, other associations to do that. One of the things that we've also done over the last little while is been very supportive by providing mentorship and leadership where needed, and also bringing in an opportunity for the Student Trustee Association to benefit from some of the resources that OPSPA has, but also making sure there's a linkage to what we're doing as an organization. And supporting the work of our student trustees across the province. And so I know that's the next piece up. And I do want to say that OPSPA is heavily supportive, heavily involved in ensuring that the Osta-ACO organization is successful. You'll hear that, I'm sure, through our student trustees, and that is been a great organization for the voice of students across Ontario over the last little while. So happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Trustee McDonald. Trustee McAllister.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I support everything that Trustee McDonald has indicated. I would like to also point out that our board has input into various committees of the board, of the OPSPA board, in particular, policy and professional development and educational resources. And I think that that is a very important role for us to play at that level. So I support the motion.
All right, I see no other questions or comments, so we will ask you to cast your ballot online.
I support the motion, Chair. I can't seem to find the link.
That motion carries. I would ask Student Trustee Ali or Verk, or both, to speak to this next motion, which I'm going to read. Moved by Trustee Dufour and seconded by Trustee Swan, that the Upper Canada District School Board renew the 2024-2025 membership for the Ontario Student Trustees Association, l'Association des élèves conseillers et conseillères de Ontario. Not too bad, yeah. I wasn't French immersion, I'm sorry. You can tell. Anyways, yes, so would you like to speak to that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. So our organization, the Ontario Student Trustees Association, it's the largest official student stakeholder group in Ontario, advocating for our 80 student trustees that are members across the province, representing over 2 million students. For over 20 years, our organization has been a very strong, effective, and certainly positive voice for all of our students, and we make sure to empower student trustees as well as our constituent students, our student senates, to try our best to improve public education across the province and to ensure that students have a say in many of the decisions that are affected in their own education. Of course, in addition to our advocacy work, the Ontario Student Trustees Association provides many rich professional development opportunities for student trustees. We host 3 annual conferences as well as a variety of other events. I have had the wonderful opportunity to be on the leadership team for the Ontario Student Trustees Association, acting as our Vice President events for this year, in which I'm responsible for many of the professional development activities that occur throughout our 3 provinces. We've had the opportunity to host our first successful one, our Fall General Meeting in October, hosting many notable guests, including the Minister of Education, as well as the Ontario Public School Board Association's President, Kathy Abraham, as well as many other professional development workshops related to networking for student trustees, being able to connect with your constituents, hosting very effective group events, charities, fundraisers, student senate meetings as well, and really equipping student trustees with the opportunity to empower themselves and prepare them to be effective leaders within their term as well as beyond. So another one of our projects is our students' vision for education. Trustees can find a link to this vision included in the report. This vision is currently being updated over the course of the year. It's one of our big major projects, and it lays out our ambitious roadmap to try to change education to ultimately benefit students as well as all of our other stakeholders in education. It currently has a variety of different pillars relating to equity, strengthening our rural and northern schools in the province as well, modernizing our school boards for 21st century learning, with the introduction of various new technologies that are shaping the way our schools and curricula are determined, making sure that we support student well-being as well as the role that students have within school board governance. So we're rooted in both research, student voice, and we try our best to incorporate results from various surveys across thousands of Ontario students in the past couple of years, as well as testimonials made from direct students within our province. It's a plan that was made by the students and directly for the students, and one that we've been working hard over the course of this year to update, bring into a new post-pandemic world, and really strengthen student advocacy voice in our province.
Thank you. Questions or, oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I apologize.
I'll pass
Go
it
ahead.
on to my fellow co-trustee.
Trustee
Narab.
Ali, yes.
Through you, Chair, OSTECO is genuinely an organization that advocates for the students and provides student trustees with valuable information and opportunities. With regards to the student trustee role, the resources that the organization of the Ontario Student Trustees Association provides in terms of professional development has been instrumental in my work. In my roles of Vice Chair of Student Senate and Chair of the Student Equity and Inclusion Committee, by the resources and guidance that OSTECO has and continues to provide myself, along with the FOC and student trustees across Ontario, I've been able to confidently bring forward the student voice, advocate for key initiatives, empower student-led equity, and truly perform the responsibilities and commitments that the role of a student trustee entails to the best of my abilities, and I know FOC has as well, so you just say that.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Trustee McAllister?
No, I'm sorry. My hand is supposed to be down. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions or comments, I would ask you to cast your ballot online.
In favor, Chair.
I'd like to have my vote recorded in favor of the motion.
Trustee McAllister, would you vote, please?
I don't see it online, Chair, but I am voting in favor.
Thank you. That motion passes. Moving on to item 11.6, Chair of SEAC, Trustee Labonte, is going to bring to us the report of the December 5th, 2023 meeting of the Special Education Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. We met, as usual, in a hybrid fashion on Tuesday, December 5th. We had a very detailed presentation and discussion about the award-winning real-world project at Russell High School called Apartment 217. And at this time, we would like to share a video with you about that project.
Hi everyone, I'm Dominique Bertrand, principal at Russell High School. Welcome to Apartment 217. This year, we've adapted an apartment here at Russell High School. And our apartment allows our students to kind of have a real life experience. So we've split up our apartment in several different areas. We have our quiet area that allows the kids to just have that real downtime.
For Learning Girls, I'm still working on my passion project. A passion project is like where they have stuff like animations, wallpapers, storyboards, and Canva and so, because I'm working on a video which is called Going to Las Vegas.
We see here we have a little bit of a living room set up. So oftentimes we'll have the teacher put on a presentation and everybody kind of sits in more of a circle rather than at a desk. It makes it a little more intimate and the kids get to interact with each other a little more. So we have this kitchen area. The students all sit down at a kitchen table and they learn their table manners. So they have to clean up their spot, wipe down the table.
The kitchen is pretty cool because it's kind of thin and yeah, to put the things in a coffee pot because put a hot chocolate in.
It really gives a feel of their own place. The apartment is set up so that it feels like a home. There's personal pictures up on the wall of them doing activities here. It's a really inviting place for them, and they get to invite their friends in from outside if they're celebrating a birthday or they want to watch a movie. It's a really neat place.
Bye.
I was very fortunate to be with the Trustee Innovation Awards Committee, presenting the award to them, and saw what they did and how they set up these two classrooms into this space for all the students to use. We had quite a significant discussion around how this was set up and how we could leverage this great activity throughout our board. We then continued. The feature presentation of the evening was from the special education staff on coordinated service planning and how we do a very rigorous job at identifying and coordinating all the special services required for some of our students. Then, as part of our regular mandated work, the committee proceeded to review and update another large part of the board's special education plan. We met last week, actually on January 9th, highlights I will give you next month. And our next meeting will be on February 6th, which I will summarize for you at the same time. Any questions or comments?
Questions or comments? Thank you for that report.
Thank you.
And we move on to the... Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah, Trustee Parisienne, my apologies.
That's no problem. Thank you, through you, Chair. I just had a comment. I wanted to follow up that after the presentation from Russell High School at the CIAC committee, we then, Russell High School and Bankley-Kill Collegiate Institute brought all their students together in apartment 217 on December 14th. And it was a great experience, not only bringing EAs and both principals together, but also I believe we had about 8 students from each school. So it was 16 students in both sides of the classroom with multiple, there was an agenda, scheduled activities. And I have to say, it was a true joy to see these students come out of their shell. And also some of these students recognized the EAs that were now at different schools or principal that was at a different school that was once at their school. And it really truly felt like a community event, even though there's about 45 kilometers difference between both schools. So, you know, CIAC brings these opportunities to shine for the whole board. And just, it's great to see that we're able to share what is going on in our schools at multiple different levels.
Trustee McAllister.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have a question for Trustee Labonte as chair of CIAC. I think, as I recall, in December, I was there as part of the Trustee Innovation Award Committee to present this award to these people. And at that time, they identified for me a number of wants and needs on a video board, which I think I have already sent to the director. I'm just wondering, Trustee Labonte, if you could tell me, has there been any progress on these wants and needs?
Director?
Mr. Director?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the regular process, if a school has some things that they are requiring or looking into, they would work through their principal and through their superintendent if they had some. I know you shared the picture that you'd taken of their board with me, so it was good for me to see that. But again, we have a process if schools are looking for some capital projects or if they're looking for additional supplies. And as we all know, that's not through trustees who are governance. It's through, it would be through the regular channels with the board staff. So I'm sure the principals followed up with the superintendent, and we'll see where it goes from there. Thank you.
We move on to the next item, 11.7, which is also the responsibility of Trustee Labonte as chair of the Policy and Bylaws Committee. And we have his report. There are 4 motions, and Trustee Labonte?
Thank you, Chair, through you. The committee, on the next slide, there we go, met on Monday, December 18th, all online on Teams. I just wanted to preference, as I usually do, that everyone on the committee and several members of senior staff who are the designated owners of the policies, review the 4 policies that we're talking about tonight and sending to for trustee approval. So the first policy was policy 301, appropriate use of technology.
And I will read the motion moved by trustee Dufour and seconded by trustee Swan that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 301, the appropriate use of technology, as reviewed January 17th, 2024. Trustee Labonte.
As you can see on the document, there were no changes suggested to this policy.
Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, would you cast your vote online?
I'm in favor, Chair.
That motion passes. Motion 2, moved by trustee Swan and seconded by trustee Dufour, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 402, display of flags, as reviewed January 17th, 2024. Would you like to speak to that, Chair Labonte?
Again, thank you, Chair. And again, this was so well written, there were no changes recommended to change.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, please cast your vote online.
I am in favor, Chair.
That motion passes. Motion 3, moved by trustee Dufour and seconded by trustee Swan, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 430, safe schools, as reviewed with revisions on January 17th, 2024. Trustee Labonte.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Again, there were very few changes, a couple of minor grammatical changes that you can see highlighted in yellow.
Questions or comments? Please cast your vote online.
In favor, Chair.
That motion passes. Motion 4, moved by trustee Swan, seconded by trustee Dufour, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 441, smoke-free environments, as reviewed with revisions January 17th, 2024. Trustee Labonte.
Thank you, Chair, through you. There were no significant changes required to the actual policy, but I think you can see highlighted in yellow at the top, there were some minor changes or additions actually on cross-referencing for clarity.
Questions or comments? Please cast your vote online.
In favor, Chair.
Trustee Persy in favor.
That motion passes. Trustee Labonte, do you wish to speak to anything else before giving the floor over to your report?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to mention that we're also looking at, it's a very extensive document called the board's bylaws, and we've come up with a couple of minor changes. We've got more to look at, but we will be presenting a full package to the board sometime soon.
Thank you for the work you do and the work of your committee. Items 1201 to 1203 are information and correspondence. Please take a look at those. And that brings us to the final item, item 13, adjournment. And it's moved by trustee Danaher and seconded by trustee Dufour, that the regular meeting in public session of the Upper Canada District School Board, January 17th, 2024, be adjourned at 8:03. The next regular meeting is scheduled for February 14th, 2024. Thank you very much.
In favor.
Vote online, please. That motion passes. Have a safe trip home.
Good night.
Safe travels.
Bring this the next time.